Tween Book Bites here at the Scott County Public Library in Georgetown, Kentucky. As usual, I'm Miss Kelly. This is Miss Mary Lou, and today we are coming to you to speak about a special topic in combination with a big exhibit we've got here at the library.
We're going to be talking about books for tweens, that's ages 8 to 12, that have to do with the Holocaust. A little bit later in the month, we're going to be doing a book bites about Jewish culture, mostly a lot of contemporary books and some fantasy and stuff like that, but today we're going to really focus in on the Holocaust.
Yes. So
we're going to just jump right to it. I'll get started.
Okay. Makes sense. You have 5, I have 4.
Yes. So I just want to put World War II in just a brief context because we're going to see a theme in a lot of these books. After World War I, Germany lost that war. They were financially devastated.
Shopping carts full of money. Shopping carts full of money is the thing I always remember talking about in school.
How so? What do you mean?
That like the German dollar was worth so little that you needed so much money to even go shopping.
It's a lot of poverty. People didn't have jobs, and of course the Great Depression hit, which was worldwide. So a lot of people were very resentful of the poverty, the lack of jobs. It was a very difficult time in Germany recuperating from World War I. And basically the world kind of just, you're on your own. You started that war, so you figure out how to do it yourself. You're going to see that in the rise of Nazism, a lot of people have been marginalized during this time of economic upheaval, finding Nazism appealing because it offered prosperity, a way out of this really bad, at least what they believed was a way out of this really bad situation, and Jews often became the scapegoat for the suffering that Germany had been through after World War I. So that's important because a lot of the characters in these books kind of fit in that group, and that was what drew them to Nazism. So I wanted to put that kind of in that context. The first book I'm going to talk about is called When the World Was Ours, and I love this book. It's by Liz Kessler.
It was real good.
Really good. She is best known for writing a fantasy series called the Emily Windsnap books, which mermaids. But this book, she is Jewish herself, and her family was impacted by the Holocaust. And she said she carried the story. This is not about her family, but it's inspired by her family's experiences. And she said she carried this story in her a long time before she actually sat down to write it. So just briefly, this book follows 3 characters. Their names are Leo, Elsa, and Max, and they live in Austria, Vienna, Austria. And if you've ever seen The Sound of Music, that takes place in Vienna, Austria. That's where that movie takes place. So that's where they lived, and they are the best of friends. The book starts off in the year 1936. Leo is Jewish. His father is a very much loved photographer in their town. Max is not Jewish. His father their family is poor. His father's very bitter. He's often unemployed. Their home is not a happy place. Elsa is a delightful girl. Both of the boys are in love with her. They both want to marry her when they grow up. And she is just a little spitfire. They love her. She also comes from a Jewish family. And you're going to follow them through this novel from 1936 through the 40s, and then ultimately into adulthood for the ones that survive during the war. And one of their families tries to leave the country immediately. One of the families tries to leave the country later, and one of the families gets drawn into the persecution of the Jews. And the thing I loved about this book, you see the Holocaust from the perspective of people that were victims of the Nazi persecution and people that were perpetrators of the Nazi persecution.
That was the one that really got me in that book.
Yeah, that's really it's a painful read, and I encourage really more for maybe ages even 10 and up with this book. It's pretty raw in some places, but it is a story that is beautifully told. When the World Was Ours by Liz Kessler.
Yes, highly suggestible. I shall start with Out of Hiding by Ruth Gruner, foreword by Alan Gratz, because this is the story, if you are familiar, most of you are familiar with Alan Gratz books.
We'll talk about one in a minute.
Yes, but a different one. One of his books, Prisoner B3087, 3087, I don't know, that book is based heavily on the life of Jack Gruner, and this is the story of the woman who would become his wife, Ruth. She lived in what was Poland, is now the capital of Ukraine. She was born Aurelia Czeslava. It's my best guess. I don't.
Ukrainian?
I do not. Last name Gamzer. But she went through like a ton of nicknames. She ended up being called Lucia. That was her favorite nickname. Her parents ran a chocolate shop, and they were much beloved in the neighborhood. And eventually, once things started getting worse and worse for Jews, which Ruth is, I believe she's still alive. That kind of saved them, in that if they were forced to move out of their apartment, move to the ghetto, her parents are able to kind of like sneak her out. It's kind of a delightful scene in my head, because she says that she like wraps herself around her father's leg under his big long coat, and he walks her out of the ghetto because he had a past that said he was a useful Jew. And so a former like patron of the shop, who remembered the kindness of the father, was like, yes, we will take her, we will hide her. It wasn't like the best situation, but it saved her life. And an employee was like, you, sir, are my best friend, you weren't just my boss, I absolutely will save you. So they made it completely through the Holocaust by being in hiding, which, lucky, but also it really went into the fact, like, Lucia literally, she had to stay away from windows, which is the common theme. She couldn't move. She literally, for months and months, had to sit on a couch and make no noise. So at one point, she was moving from hiding spots from one apartment to another, and she had to relearn to walk and to talk before they could move her, because they were like, it'd be really suspicious if we just got this girl that can't walk and can't talk, and all of a sudden we're just like out in the sun with her. And man, it's real good. And honestly, just the first maybe third, I think, is about her experiences during the Holocaust, and the rest of it is her story of immigrating to the United States, and just how much that took and how long it took. Months and months. They would move to another settlement area, and they would wait again, and they would move and then wait. And they were lucky in that they had family in the U.S. already who had moved there years and years ago, before she was even born. And then how hard it was for her to fit in with all these other kids in New York City or in Brooklyn, and she's like, these kids are really nice, I'm having a good time, but this is also not, they don't understand me. It's real good. And it's just written. It is written so well, and so easily accessibly, if that makes sense. It's just very, I don't know, like, the pages are not full, it's a very quick read, but it's the kind of thing where you read it really quick because you want to know what happens, but then you can just go back and sit and read it again slower, so that because it's just really good. Absolutely. Highly suggest.
Excellent. My next book is called Resistance, and it's by Jennifer A. Nielsen.
She's wonderful.
Many of you have read other books by her. She's a fabulous writer. She writes a lot of historical fiction, and this is called Resistance, and this is about a girl named Chaya. And I also hope I'm pronouncing it right. She's Polish, and she's a teenager. She's an older teenager. She's maybe 16 or 17 years old, and she is Jewish, but she does not look Jewish. It was a really big thing that the Nazis would do. They would draw pictures of Jews with dark hair and the dark eyes and a big, gigantic hawk nose, and that was like a cartoonish image of Jewish people that was perpetrated by the Nazis. Chaya had blonde hair and blue eyes. She looked what they called Aryan, which is a white-skinned, fair person from Aryan has to do with a language lineage, but that was what the Nazis considered to be purity, was people that were 100% Aryan. And she looked Aryan, and so she put a cross around her neck so people would think she was a Christian. And she became involved with the Jewish resistance in the Warsaw Ghetto in Poland. And because of her appearance, she was able to go back and forth over the border, in and out of the ghetto, and she would smuggle in food, she would smuggle in information, and she would smuggle out people to safe houses. It was and then she graduated too, she started participating in night raids where they would steal weapons and things of that nature. Very, very, very dangerous work. This book reads like a thriller. I mean, it's just so action-packed and you can't put it down. What I love about it is this is one of the books that's really inspiring because you think about the risks that some people took with their lives to help others, to save other people's lives, and to resist this nightmare that was happening to them. And this book is inspired by real events and real people. Chaya is a fictional character, but a lot of the other characters in the book are based on real people. So this book is very inspiring, very exciting read, and just I love the heroism in it. Really neat. Night Divide is another book right in the back. Resistance by Jennifer A. Nielsen. Excellent.
All right. My next one is another memoir, Signs of Survival, a memoir of the Holocaust by Renee Hartman with Joshua M. Green. This one was really interesting. So these two sisters, like Resistance, one of the sisters looks Aryan and the other sister does not. And one of the girls, Renee, can hear her sister Herta is deaf, and so are both their parents. So they communicate solely in sign language. Renee has to be the ears of the entire family. So when the police are coming, there's going to be a raid that happens, it is on Renee solely to warn the rest of her family and be like, we have to hide, we have to get out of here. Which is a lot for a kid. They live in Bratislava, which was then Czechoslovakia, is now the capital of Slovakia. One day their parents are taken from them, before that, the parents, there's a farm with a couple who are also deaf there was a community. And they agree to take in the girls at the farm as long as the parents will pay them like an exorbitant sum every month, which seems a little terrible, but also they were taking a huge risk for themselves. And so the girls are fine, their parents are taken, and eventually the lady on the farm is like, parents haven't paid us in months, you have to go. Yeah, so they wander around. They come to a point where they realize they are probably the only Jews left in the city. And instead of just wandering around, they decide that we're just going to turn ourselves in. So they do. And at first the police are like, yeah, okay, you're Jews. Oh, you're serious. And so they are sent on a train to Bergen-Belsen, the concentration camp, and have to do that in the most. So this is, I said it was by Renee Hartman with Joshua M. Green. And so Renee, this is, if I remember correctly, the transcription of her story as told in oral history. Or maybe I'm getting the two mixed up. I don't think I am.
Lots of pictures in the back.
There's lots of pictures in the back. There's a lot of pictures in the back of Out of Hiding as well, which is really cool. Maybe I am getting it. No, I am not. So they are, where did it go? I will find it. Maybe I won't find it. Anyway, there's a museum in the U.S. that takes oral histories of people who survived the Holocaust, and this is one of them.
Didn't Steven Spielberg, I think, had something to do with it after he made the movie Schindler's List?
That sounds vaguely familiar,
I
yeah.
think that's right. Ready
Yeah.
for the next one?
Yes.
Okay. Black Radishes, and this book is by Susan Lynn Meyer, and this one is based on her family's experience in the Holocaust. The main character in this book is a boy named Gustav. He lives in Paris. The year is 1940. He lives in a Jewish neighborhood of Paris, and it's a wonderful life. Their relatives are in the neighborhood. He has all these friends. It's a very warm community that he is a part of. But as Hitler's taking over more and more of Europe, the rumors are starting to fly about what happens. They're hearing about Jews being harassed, Jews losing their jobs, Jews losing their business, and they start to hear about these internment camps that Jews are being sent to. And they are getting more and more scared about it, and they begin to see the presence of the Nazis. So Gustav's parents decide to move them out to the country. They feel like as soon as if France falls, the first thing that's going to go is Paris, and so they want to move out in the country. They have relatives in the United States, so they're going to be able to immigrate out of the country, but it takes forever to get out of the country. And Gustav's father is also a Swiss citizen, and Switzerland was neutral at that point in the war. So he could travel pretty freely, even if the rest of the family couldn't, but they were all Jewish. So anyway, it's very hard because they can't get their relatives to come with them, but they move out into the country. And sure enough, the Nazis move in. They take over part of France, not all of France. There is a demarcation line, and this part is occupied and this part is not. And Gustav and his family live on this side of the demarcation line. Literally, the line is down the road from where they live, and the city where they're living is primarily Christian and Catholic. And already Gustav is getting bullied and picked on because people suspect that they left Paris because they were Jews. But anyway, food dries up. They're not farmers. They don't have anything to eat. But Gustav's father, he had a store, just kind of a general store, and he brought all these goods from his store in his truck when they moved out there. So he keeps going across the demarcation line to barter for food. But as things get worse, he puts a false wall in the back of his truck so he can smuggle out people into the unoccupied area. But he begins by making friends with all these Nazi soldiers along the demarcation line, and the title Black Radishes come from he would bring these black radishes back to eat, but the German soldiers loved black radishes with their beer. They drank beer, and he would give them. He made friends with them by giving them the radishes, and he warmed them up, let them search his truck, so that when he started smuggling people,
No questions
asked. And anyway, this book is it really. I think what the powerful part of this book is you can just feel their world getting smaller and smaller and smaller as the Nazis closed in tighter and tighter and tighter, and you can feel the fear, because you're seeing it all through Gustav's eyes, and he's just a boy, but you can feel him, the childhood that was stolen from these kids, that he couldn't be a boy anymore because it was what this was doing to their family. And knowing that his friends were still in Paris and he wasn't hearing from them. So it really gives that sense of the building fear and the tightness of their lives. Excellent, excellent novel. Black Radishes by Susan Lynn Meyer.
If I Spy, is that the first of a series?
There's a sequel to it.
Okay.
Yes.
I can see the little number on the spine.
Yes, and I will, there's a sequel. I won't say what's in it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. My next one is Hidden by, I'm going to wreck that. It is French. I'll give it to you.
Dauvilliers.
Dauvilliers. Mark
Lizano.
and Greg Salcedo.
Yeah.
Okay. Didn't totally butcher those. Yes. So Hidden. This is another child story of Holocaust. It starts out with Elsa, she's a little girl, approximately on our time period. She has a nightmare, can't sleep, gets up and is like, I'm going to go get something to drink, maybe that'll help. She encounters her grandmother, Dunya, sitting downstairs and is like, oh, you couldn't sleep either? And her grandmother's like, something like that. And little Elsa is just like, sometimes when I tell people about my bad dreams, it helps me feel better. And her grandmother is like, I think you might be right. And so she starts to tell her story of the Holocaust. It is a graphic novel. It's very short, so I don't want to say too much to spoil it. But a couple of tidbits that I really enjoyed and are similar to a lot of the other stories. Dunya, the grandmother, is saved when her parents stick her in the bottom of an armoire. They pull the bottom shelf out, stick her inside, and they're like, do not move until someone comes and gets you. And so her downstairs neighbors, who I believe are Christians, come and get her after her parents are taken and saves her life. Before that, though, her father tried to kind of hide her from the horrors, in that when they all had to sew the Jewish star on their clothes, he tried to make it fun for her, and he was like, yeah, no, you are a sheriff now. We're all going to be sheriffs. And then it kind of backfires because immediately in school, like, Dunya doesn't understand what's happening, like, at all. Everybody's just really mean to her all of a sudden. And there's another Jewish girl in class who's like, she's like, why? We're sheriffs. And the other little girl is like, you're an idiot. We don't have sheriffs here. That's not what's happening. It's to mark the fact that we're Jews because everybody hates us now. And it was just a beautiful, well, I mean, the outcome was not beautiful, but the fact that her father tried to be like, no, you're a sheriff. You're so good. It was wonderful. And I really like it. It's really good. Graphic novel.
Alan Gratz. Maybe you know Alan Gratz and you love his books. And he's written 2 about the Holocaust, and this is one of them. I did not get to read the other one. I had it at home, and anyway.
It's a lot of Holocaust books at one time.
It's hard. It's really hard stuff. Project 1065. This is what it is like to be in the Nazi youth, if you want to go into that space and see what that's like. The Nazi youth were, it was a training ground for the Gestapo and the SS, which was the elite soldiers that were particularly renowned for their cruelty. But they were the police force of the Nazis, and so this was a training ground for young people. And not every young person wanted to be in the Nazi youth, but it was pretty much required of every youth to be in the Nazi youth. However, Michael, who is Irish, his parents are diplomats. And early in the war, Ireland was neutral during the war, so neutral about the conflict. And so his parents come over to serve as Irish diplomats in Nazi Germany. And because they were neutral, they just buddied up with the Nazis, went to all these, high office dinners, like if you're in the diplomatic corps, it's a very elite life. But they were actually really spies. His mother was a professional spy, and his father was a diplomat, but he was helping his wife spy for the Allies, and the Allies were the countries that were fighting against the Nazis. So they were chummy with the Nazis, and gathering all this information and sending it back to the Allies. And when Michael figures out what's going on, they recruit him, kind of like they need him to get into the Nazi youth so they can report on, because the Nazis used the youth, particularly as the war wore on and all their soldiers are being killed. They played a more important role. And so this book is what it was like to infiltrate the Nazi youth. And this is where you're going to see some of the earlier stuff I was talking about, the context of the kids that were marginalized, that often became some of the most awful SS, like the Nazi youth. You can see that happening there, that they were the ones that were just so hungry for power. But anyway, this reads like a good thriller. It's a very exciting book, but also quite dark. Quite dark. Project 1065 by Alan Gratz.
All right. My final book is hands down my favorite. I'm not done with it yet. It's still my favorite. I had to kind of pause because I was crying like a small child. It was just a little much. All of these books are good, but I don't know, there's something about this one that really hit me, just, I don't know, saying something because some of them are nonfiction. Anyway, this is The Length of a String by Alyssa Brent Weitzman. And this is similar in a sense to Hidden in that our main character here is Imani, who is living in our times. She is adopted as a baby into a Jewish family, and she is now old enough. She is preparing for her bat mitzvah, and instead of throwing a giant party like some of the girls in her class, or just like a big luncheon special thing, she and her family have decided that she's just gonna, within reason, gets to ask for a large gift is what she gets for her bat mitzvah. And Imani is trying to work up the confidence to tell her parents that what she really wants is to learn, maybe meet her birth parents. And she's really struggling because she's like, they're my parents. I'm not saying that they're not my parents, but I'm a black girl adopted into this Jewish family, and I kind of want to know where I come from. Then she gets home, she's all keyed up, she's gonna tell her mom, and she gets home and her mom is crying over like a pot of soup in the kitchen. She's like, what happened? Her great-grandmother Anna had died, and so the whole family packs up. They go from, I think they live in Jersey, they go to New York to the funeral, and there's something said at the ceremony that makes Imani think that Grandma Anna, but your great-grandma, was she adopted as well? And afterwards they're going through the will, and she had left all of the grandkids things, and what she left Imani was all of her books. And among them is her diary. And so eventually the book, it starts to go back and forth between the diary entries of her great-grandmother Anna living and escaping from the Holocaust, having to leave her entire family behind. She's the only one that makes it out, and trying to fit in this new household. She's living with cousins, and they're really nice to her, but it's not her family, and it's hard. And the story of Imani, who is kind of not exactly the same, but it's similar enough that she is just hooked, and it is so good. Again, I was sobbing like a child. I'm adopted, so it kind of hit me like right in the feels real good, and it's really well done.
I want to read this.
I cannot suggest this enough. It's so good. You have one more? Okay.
And there's some similar themes in this one. Linked by Gordon Corman, another very popular writer for young people.
I didn't realize he wrote a Holocaust book.
He did, and this book was inspired, the story in the book is inspired by the movie, or by the events of 6 million paper clips, which is where a group of kids in Tennessee collected 6 million paper clips and put them in a link to, because that was the number, the approximate number of Jews that were killed in the Holocaust, 6 million. There were approximately 4 million other people that were political prisoners, homosexuals, people with disabilities, the Romani people, that they were all slaughtered in the Holocaust, with 6 million Jews. And what happens is this takes place in current times. And Link is a very popular athletic kid, and one day he's in school, he gets there early, I can't remember why he's there early, but he discovers somebody discovers a huge swastika on the wall of the school. Now the swastika, for those of you that don't know, is that kind of crooked cross that is the symbol of the Nazis, a swastika. And they discover it's considered a hate symbol now. But it's
so hard because the original symbol in Buddhism, it's like turned a little bit, and they totally stole from Buddhism and corrupted it, and it's
Anyway, they find a big swastika. They don't know who put it there, but the principal decides to do this massive education on hate, but the kids decide that this is just a canned curriculum. It's really not, or that they decide they're going to do their own project inspired. They have learned about the 6 million paper clips. They were going to do a paper chain of 6 million, but in the meantime, the swastikas keep appearing. like every day, another swastika appears somewhere. Like, who is doing this? So the story's part mystery. But Link also is going to find out that his grandmother has recently found out that she is a Holocaust survivor. And she did not know that. She was an adopted child. And her parents, when she was an infant, left her in a convent with nuns that took in these Jewish babies. They never told her heritage. They raised her. She was adopted, raised as a Catholic. So he comes to this Catholic family. They're not real religious, but that's their identity. Well, if you don't know this, you may not know this, but Jewish heritage is passed down through the mother. Okay, if your mother is Jewish, you are Jewish. Your father's not Jewish, or your father's Jewish, you can be, doesn't mean you can't be Jewish, but that lineage is passed down through the mother. And so he finds out that his grandmother, who was his mother's mother, was Jewish, and Link gets real interested. Like, I'm a Jew. What does that mean? And he decides to start studying for his bar mitzvah. And so you kind of follow this kind of awakening to his Jewish heritage. He's learning about, this swastika thing suddenly becomes very personal because there's none of their family left. None of them survived the Holocaust except his grandmother. But who is doing these swastikas? And so that's part of the story as well. So this, lots of things going on in this book, and it reads like any good Gordon Corman book. He manages to slip a little bit of humor in there, not much. It's not a very funny story, but there's a little bit of it, and a little bit of a mystery. And you're going to find out in the end who's doing it. But you're also going to follow Link's spiritual journey of discovering his Judaism. Linked by Gordon Corman. Nice. Check it out. And also, one of the things I wanted to be sure to include at the end is on November 29th, we're going to show the movie 6 Million Paperclips. And it's a movie, they went in and did a documentary about these kids that collected these paper clips. And we're going to be showing it as a family movie. We're recommending it for ages 5 and up. On the 29th of November, we're going to show it at 6:30 p.m. Please come.
Yes. Please.
And we have a special section in the tween area. If you go where the tween books are, at the very beginning of the tween area, we have a special display of Holocaust books.
Yes.
We're going to put all these books there, so you'll be able to find them on this special display.
Right above the A's.
Come get them, come read them. These are great books, everyone. And there's more. There's a lot. We didn't even get, we just touched on the surface of great Holocaust literature.
Yeah, there's so much. All right.
So come back and see us again. We're going to be talking a little bit later about books.
December
that reflect
1st, I believe.
December 1st?
December 1st.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.